Okay, so today I want to talk about the sin of sloth. And in a more layman's terms, I think this refers more to avoiding the work that you should be doing or procrastination. And when I mean the work, I don't necessarily mean like your your day-to-day 9 to 5 kind of thing, but that could be it. But I'm talking about the great work, the magnum opus, as they call it in alchemy, or your dharma, as they call it in Hinduist and Buddhist religion. It's like the work you're set here to do kind of thing, like your life mission. Now, this is not going to be a discussion about, whether you have destiny or free will and stuff like that, but I do believe personally that everyone was not just came here to just survive, okay? Like everyone's came here for a very specific reason. It's like everyone carries a certain unique frequency within them that if they were fully able to exert out onto this planet, into the universe, it would contribute more to the universe and help it to grow. And every time you don't allow yourself to exert that frequency, then in a way you're inhibiting the growth of the entire universe. Like you're fucking it up for everybody. And I don't know about you, but every time I'm not doing, let's say, my great work or my dharma, I feel really shit. And then I get depressed, I feel weak, and it's not until, finally I start doing the things I want to do. And there's a bunch of reasons why we might not do it, which I'll get into. But when I finally do the things I want to do, like, fuck, I feel so confident in myself, I feel so energetic, and I feel so sure of myself. And it's like, that's it, that's the work. It's like, when you do the work, that's inherently, I guess what you're created to do, what's inherently in you, then it's almost like you have the power of divinity, you have the power of truth and God on your side, and that propels you forward into this world, and then you serve as a vessel for that energy. And if you act as that, then fuck, that's fucking powerful, man. Okay, so the first reason that we might not do what we actually want to do is the fear of failure. So, I think everybody has dreams and things they want to do, or even small dreams, like mini dreams that they want to do, and a lot of the times, because it's such a it's such a thing that's so important to us. We're, we feel so vulnerable when we tell people, when we expose people that this is what we want to do. So we're really afraid of failure, and the judgment that comes from the failure from other people. Because you put yourself out there, and it's like maybe it's not something you've really done before, and everyone knows you as you doing something else. But now suddenly you're putting your foot forward, and now people are like, oh hey, so and so is doing this thing, ha ha ha. And because you pander so much to that judgment, you're not actually, you don't actually take the first step to doing what you want to do. And not only is the failure from other people, but it's the failure of judgment. Sorry, it's the fear of judgment or failure from yourself. Because if you go outside and you do something and you fuck it up, then potentially your own self-image of how cool you are or how skilled or competent you are could crumble. And because you're too afraid to face that, I guess, humiliation, and again, this comes back to the sin of pride, your ego, then you don't actually go forward into fucking up, being humiliated, and then going forward and becoming something out of it. Because, like they always say, the main thing that differentiates losers from winners is that winners, they've lost more than losers ever have, and that's what made them a winner. So, and I think this is such a bad thing in society that we have when we don't do things because we're afraid of judgment from other people. Because so I like to listen to Gary Vee, and if you ever listen to him, like he says, one thing that's really good for your life is you go into a retirement home, you talk to old people, and you ask them, oh, what's something you wish you would have done? And then like most of them, they say, oh, I wish I could have done the things I really want to do, but I didn't do it because I was afraid what people would think of me. But now I'm 80 years old, I don't have any time, I'm about to die, I don't have time anymore to do the things I wish I had to do. And fuck, that is so fucking depressing. Like, don't ever, don't ever, and I hope you don't ever, get yourself into that state when you're so old and you run out of time to do things you're afraid to do. Because it's like, well, the thing is, sure, you could fuck up and it could be humiliating, but it could also really work out, and you could really live a life you want to live. And it's like, well, this is your life. If you go through your entire life not living it, and it's like, well, it's almost like you're giving the middle finger to God and your creation for bringing you here to do the things you actually want to do, your great work, right? And I believe your great work is not necessarily something you should stress over. It's literally what makes you the most happy and the most excited. And if you can do that to the best of your abilities, you don't have to necessarily even succeed, you just have to try. And if you do that, then you're doing the right thing, in my opinion. And yes, if you want to be strong, if you want to be a winner, you have to you have to relinquish these fears of judgment from other people. Otherwise, you're just constantly holding yourself back from the greatness that you can be. So that's one reason is judgment. We don't put our foot out there because we're afraid of what people think. And then another one is, this is kind of a minor one, and it's like sometimes you have something you want to do and maybe it's not super urgent, so that you don't do it. The guilt of not doing the work is less than the joy you get from procrastinating. In the beginning, because if something is not due immediately, you don't really care, so you procrastinate and it feels fun and you don't really feel guilty for not doing it because you're like, well, I have so much time. But then over time, as you get closer to the deadline, you realize, holy fuck, I don't have enough time. Then the guilt of not doing it spikes, and then your procrastination enjoyment just goes down because you can't think of anything else, and then you'll do the work. Even for the things you really want to do, sometimes you don't do it because, again, of the fear of judgment, right? But then it gets to a certain point where running away from it doesn't feel as good anymore, as then just fucking plunging into the dips and doing it. And then that's when you might take action and actually do something. The third one, I think, is a big one, is that you don't know what is right for you. You don't know what it is you should do. It's like, oh, well, we gotta do the great work. We gotta do our dharma and shit. But it's like, well, what is our dharma? What is our great work? We don't know, right? So one good way to know what it is you want to do is actually to figure out what it is you don't want to do. So you go through life like literally just doing whatever the fuck, you can, and then from that you sample what feels good, what doesn't feel good, and over time you start eliminating the things that don't feel good until you hone into the things that does feel good. And I mean, a really good way to do this is literally ask yourself, with your current lifestyle, whether you're studying or working or whatever it is you're doing, it's like, are you enjoying your life as much as you can? Are you genuinely grateful for everything? I mean, you can always be grateful, but it's like, grateful is not the right word. I think it's like, do you believe that this is truthfully the best life that you can live? And if you can, have a semblance of an imagination of a different type of life that you could potentially live in, then you owe it to yourself to try your best to move towards that direction. Like, even if it's minuscule, it's like you need to have that vector inside of you to move towards. Otherwise, you will always stagnate in a world that is like kind of lesser than what the full potential of you could be. There's always this really great question, from Alan Watts, and he always poses, it's like, look, if you had all the money in the world, like, what would you do? And that's always a really good way to go from it. And a lot of people might say, I want to travel, I want to do this, or I want to do that. Well, it's like, okay, well, if you want to travel, you want to do this or that, then it's like, how can you create a lifestyle that allows you to do that? So, for example, if you want to work and travel and stuff, or whatever, it's like, well, can you design a lifestyle that lets you work remotely, or maybe you run a business online that allows you to travel anywhere you want and you can still do your work? Or can you, maybe become a flight attendant or whatever, so that your job automatically entails to travel? It's like, well, whatever it is that you want to do, try your very best to to move towards a semblance of that direction. And as long as you do that, as long as you move and try to move towards where you want to go, then you're doing it right. One thing that Bashar says is this guy, well, he's like a guy that channels an alien that talks about shit. And it might be a little bit much for some people, but for me, everything he says is very on point, and I really like what he says. And one thing he says is just follow your excitement, follow your bliss, as people say. And this comes back to like kind of like the vibrational theory of the universe, where like literally the universe is just made out of things vibrating. It's of energy. Like, even if you look at its pen, even though it's solid, if you zoom in, it's a bunch of atoms vibrating, right? So everything is literally vibrating. And when something excites you, it's literally like almost like your soul getting excited and vibrating towards that higher reality. So when you think of something you could do that's really fun, you're like, oh my god, that's really fun. It's like, that's your soul wanting to move towards that direction and to increase your energy and to increase your power, kind of thing. So if you just move towards whatever it is that you're excited by, even if you don't have like a long-term kind of dream or goal kind of thing, that still will lead you somewhere much more meaningful and truthful than you being completely stuck in your head doing things you should do that isn't actually bringing you any excitement. It's kind of like the whole Hansel and Gretel, like the breadcrumbs that lead to the gingerbread house. Well, in this case, the gingerbread house does not have a witch that will eat you, but it's just a really nice place to be. And it's like, well, you gotta go on this journey. And it's like every single, did she put, I don't know, candy or bread or whatever as the breadcrumbs? They're breadcrumbs, right? I think. So every breadcrumb is a piece of excitement that you follow, and it's like as long as you follow your soul's desire to increase your vibration via excitement, then you will inevitably be doing something really great. And again, it's like people have dreams, you know, like, oh, I mean, some people don't, some people do. And I think it's completely fine if you don't. It's like not everyone, you know, comes into this world and be like, well, I want to be an astronaut, or I want to be a rock star and stuff like that. And it's like, if you don't have those aspirations, you don't really know what you want to do, it's completely fine. Just follow the breadcrumbs. And the thing is, even if you have an aspiration, you know, for me, it's like, oh, I really want to be an actor. I want to act in big movies. But maybe one day I'll act in a few movies and I'll be like, well, that's cool, I'm done. But it's like, well, does that mean I'm just gonna die? No, it's like, even being an actor is just one big breadcrumb for me to follow. And then when I eat that breadcrumb, maybe there's another thing that's, you know, even better for me that I'm gonna keep on going. So don't think that you need to have one big thing, and don't get attached to your one big thing either, because it's all just moving and vibrating. And as long as you go into the flow of the vibration of everything, then, well, you're aligned with the universe and so on and so forth. And the thing is, I personally find that I never feel fulfilled with my life unless I'm doing the great work. And I think actually a lot of people in society aren't doing aren't fulfilled because they're not doing their great work. And the reason I say this is because a lot of people, you know, they might have a shitty life, and then instead of actually, you know, taking a step back and reflecting, oh, what is it about my life that I like or don't like, they just resort to things like drugs and food and sex, and they just numb themselves with every kind of sensory stimulus they have, like every scent they can muster, in order to kind of feel a semblance of any sort of like connection and wholeness. But that's always temporary, you know. It's like trying to feed yourself by sticking bread onto your skin. You know, no, you gotta actually feed the internal thing. And I personally believe that the internal thing is doing the work that is meaningful to you. And unless you do that, you're always going to be seeking out, you know, different luxuries and hedonistic desires to satisfy an inner sense, an inner stomach in your soul that cannot be satisfied with that. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with sex or good food or you know, psychedelics and, you know, stuff like that. But if that is but that should only be a bonus to your internal drive of creating the life that is the most meaningful to you, you know. And you shouldn't rely on that as the primary way to get your happiness from, because that's essentially that's essentially taking the engine out of a car and expecting it to run. It's not sustainable. You know, it's not going to work. Like, maybe you roll the car down a hill and it gives the illusion that it's moving, but then when you get down there, you're like, well, now you're stuck. So there's doing the work that's right for you, there's doing work that's not right for you, and then there's not doing work at all. And ideally, obviously, you know, you're doing the work that's right for you. And sometimes it's good to even do the wrong work, because even if you do the wrong work, like I said before, it's like if you do it so wrong for long enough, you realize, holy fuck, this is really wrong for me. I really don't like this. And then you start pivoting your life in a way maybe that is right for you. So that always leads to lessons. You know, like, nothing is ever necessarily good or bad. It's all lessons if you can transmute it that way. But then also sometimes, you know, doing the wrong work for the sake of being busy because you feel like if I don't do anything, I'm being lazy, that's not necessarily good either. And sometimes not doing any work could be better. And I think this whole coronavirus time has taught us that when we don't have anything to do, we really start reflecting and thinking about, oh, what is it that we really want? And you don't ever get to that state if you're constantly on this fucking hamster wheel of being busy for the sake of being busy, doing things you don't want to do. So, and there's nothing wrong, I think, with not doing any work. I think there's a fine balance between productivity and relaxation. Obviously, if you relax too much and watch too much Netflix and just jack off all day, that's not really good for you. But if you work super hard all the time and you burn yourself out, that's not good for you either. So you need to find a balance in between the two and go through into the world with that. Just make sure you don't push yourself to do wrong work way after you already know that it's wrong for you. It's like if you kind of lie to yourself about, oh no, this is what I should be doing, and you almost have an ego and you attach yourself to a certain identity. Like, maybe you were an engineer for like 10 years or something, and now that's like who you are. But maybe after 10 years, like, you're like, oh well, I don't like doing this anymore. But you're like, well, I'm an engineer, that's what I am, you know. And so you don't even try to be something else that you might actually enjoy doing more, and then you get stuck doing a life you don't really want to do. And well, I think that's a really bad time as well. And again, I think it goes back to that fear of failure. It's like, well, this is who I am. If I jump out of my lane, everyone's going to judge me for jumping out and they're going to think I'm weird. But it's like, well, if you don't jump out of your lane and actually live a life you want to live, then you're going to get to a retirement home at 80 years old and you regret your life. So I think that is such a worse a consequence than you, maybe jumping out of your lane and getting judged initially. So the ideal, obviously, is to do the work that's right for you and in the right amounts. And if you do that, then I personally believe you will live a life that's completely fulfilling and you would feel really good. And it's like, well, if you think about it, it's like, what else are we living? It's like we're seeking happiness, we're seeking contentment, we're seeking love and fulfillment and stuff like that. We're seeking, I guess, a sense of wholeness and a sense of feeling good inside, right? And you're not getting that from, neglecting what you truly want to do and just numbing yourself with, all these external stimuli, then you owe it to yourself. It behooves you to do the things you want to do because that's the only way you're going to find fulfillment. There's this one thing from the book The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho that I really like. It's like, well, if you really go on the way of your personal legend, that's what they call it, your dreams, your dharma, your magnum opus, whatever you want to call it, and you have the courage to do it, and you banish your fears and you just try your best, then the universe will conspire to help you make that a reality. And fuck, it's so cool, and I genuinely believe that. So I urge you to try your best to live the life you want to live.